Our final presenter today is no stranger to the Thiel community. Dr. Curt Thompson, the director of the DHI and member of the Religion Department, has been at Thiel since 1983. His presentation is a talk about a lecture that he delivered in October 2013 at a business school in Copenhagen, Denmark. In his lecture there, Dr. Thompson explored the integration of humanities in business education, thus the wonderfully eclectic nature of the title of his presentation, Useful Abuses of Kierkegaard in Business Education. I am proud to welcome my colleague, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mary Teresa. Thank you, other speakers. And thank you, folks, for coming out today. We do have this title, The Uses and Abuses of Kierkegaard in Business Education, and that seems like a rather strange combination. The dilemma for this little presentation is I received this invitation to present at this Copenhagen conference in October, and it was about a year before that I received the invitation. I talked to Dean Franken and asked if I would be able to do this, and she said something about let's make a deal, which included, she said that, well, if you make a presentation when you come back, then you can go. I am here, the deal is being taken care of, I think, today.
About that.
The threefold dilemma. It would be nice if I could just summarize my paper, but this mix of these two is so strange that I can't just do that. And then there's the question of style. The lecture was formal, and I don't know that that would be the way to proceed in this setting. And so I'm going with this little compromise. I see it as a compromise. Some of you might see it as a cop-out or whatever. But I thought, well, let's go with more informal style. And then let's breeze quickly at the end over the content of the paper, with maybe a little dipping into it at one point to give kind of a flavor to what we might call some substance. So I think if you hang with me for 10 minutes, there might be a little substance to get a taste of the paper. Now, we have to mention the team. The context for receiving the invitation is that I've been on this Kierkegaard research team for a while. And there are about 15 of us on this team, from people from Denmark, US, United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, Hungary, Russia. And we meet every other year on a given theme. 2012, it was religion and irrationality in Frankfurt. We don't have, some of those people are pretty A, but I'm on it, so it can't be the A team. It'd be better to say the SK team, the Soren Kierkegaard team. The leader of this team is John Stewart. You've all heard of John Stewart, but you see the big X there. It's not that John Stewart. It's the John Stewart who is one of the 38 researchers at the Soren Kierkegaard Research Center at the University of Copenhagen. This John is the editor and the driving force behind KRSRR, Kierkegaard Research, Sources, Reception, Resources, that has put out many volumes. Here's a picture of some of the volumes. There are more that have been added since that picture was taken. There are about 250 authors from around the world that have contributed to that really huge research program on Kierkegaard. I've been working pretty closely with John for close to 2 decades, and I'm honored that I serve as one of the 5 on the advisory board for the KRSRR. There was a further element of the context for this conference, and that's this book that came out by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. 2011, this book came out that had studied for a number of years business education in America. It looked at 10 schools in particular and concluded that business education for undergraduates is often too narrow. It describes the efforts of schools to address these limitations by integrating, ta-da, liberal arts learning with learning in the business disciplines. Well, this book came out, and folks in Europe took notice of it, and it really was speaking to their situation. So they were having conferences in relation to business education as a result of this book. And one top school became especially intrigued by it, and that was the Copenhagen Business School, CBS. It was founded in 1917. It has over 20,000 students, and of those, over 3,000 of them are foreign students. And I would suggest some of you in business, if you want to go to an exciting place to study, you could go to CBS and learn a lot. They've got not all of their courses in Danish, a lot of courses in English. It has undergraduate education, graduate education, and is heavy on the interdisciplinary emphasis. Well, this school realized the importance of the liberal arts, and that includes philosophy, doesn't it, Matt? Yes. And so the question was coming to their mind, don't we have a philosopher in our backyard? In fact, people are coming here studying him. I think his name is Søren Kierkegaard. One department of CBS in particular was very interested, and we'll mention that department next, but before we go there, we should mention the basic problem. Kierkegaard lived from 1813 to 55, and in those 42 years he wrote 28 books and about as much unpublished material besides the published. The most recent edition of his works, Søren Kierkegaard's Skrifter, consists of 55 pretty large volumes. His writing straddles boundaries as he covers philosophy, theology, biblical studies, aesthetics, literary criticism, psychology, fiction, devotional writing, and much more. So Kierkegaard's a sophisticated thinker, and the tradition of interpreting him is a long and distinguished one, with some complexity to it. Well, the business people marched right in and began making connections between Kierkegaard and a lot of different areas of business. And this started to cause a stir. The pure Kierkegaardians thought, I think we better make our voice heard here. Hey! They're distorting Søren's thought. We've got abuse going on here. They're abusing our hero, dragging him into all kinds of areas where he doesn't belong. And that was the problem. So, we have this one department at CBS, the Department of Management, Politics, and Philosophy. They do research across traditional disciplinary boundaries. And as they tout their message, they're continually renewing themselves as a creative, critical research and educational environment that engages with contemporary societal challenges and helps to give CBS a clear emphasis in the social sciences and the humanities. One of these department members that I talked to at the conference said, yeah, when the department started, we were all neo-Marxists. And now that's no longer the case. We're not all neo-Marxists. So it's an interesting crew. And here you have the photos of the people who teach in that department and the dissertation fellows as well. Well, they decided, let's have a conference where we will be in there sponsoring this conference with the Søren Kierkegaard Research Center. So they came up with this conference on the uses and abuses of Kierkegaard, lessons for integrating humanities in future business education. You can see this is one of their many buildings and the type of space where we had our little gathering. There were about 35 presenters at this conference from about 15 countries. And so here's the dude when he was giving his little paper on the useful abuses. And then afterwards, I was on a little thing with Melissa from France, and we were having a discussion there, and Stuart took this little picture. So the case here, improving business education today, entails including liberal learning's three modes of thought, identified in the book as analytical thinking, multiple framing, and the reflective exploration of meaning. These liberal arts concerns need to be assimilated with the more discipline-specific knowledge of accounting, finance, marketing, and management. And the thought was, Kierkegaard's work is relevant for this project. Using Kierkegaard, my claim involves abusing him, because any interpreting involves abuse. We would have some room for discussion, I think, when you're talking hermeneutics over there, with some different presuppositions, to be sure, Dan. So the content here, this is what I dealt with. I had a section on abusing interpreting, and in some contexts, the word abuse, just, you can't find sexual abuse. Oh, well, yeah. You just can't find something good about that. But I think in the area of hermeneutics, you can use this term, and it can be helpful. Appropriating whatever you're interpreting, it seems, is rendering what you're dealing with into your grasp of it on your terms. And so there is newness aplenty, especially if it's a creative interpretation. And so I argue that Kierkegaard, in the way he talks about, and that's a super important category for him, appropriating, I think he would very much be in favor of abusing him. Not sticking to the letter, but going with the spirit and making it your own in a meaningful way. Well, then on the useful abuses, I broke it up into these three major categories that I mentioned. And if you read that book, there's also a fourth one that they come with. It's sort of a composite. So analytical thinking, multiple framing, and then the reflective exploration of meaning. But the fourth being the business person who is appropriately educated should be able to operate with wise, practical reasoning. So I know my 12 minutes, I'm pushing it, but I would like to just read a little bit under this category, analytical thinking, on mediation. And for Kierkegaard, he writes on mediation as it's found in Hegel, where the mediating involves speculation, and he is quite critical of it. But it seems that it might be applicable in the business world as well. So I suggest a fairly sophisticated line of analytical thinking for business education could be developed in doing a comparison between the mediation called for in contemporary capitalism and the mediation called for in the Hegelian speculation of Kierkegaard's day. Kierkegaard's criticism, registered in the regime of philosophy 160 years ago, is applicable today in the regime of business. Capitalism today is dominated by the shareholder model of the firm or business enterprise. This model has grown out of the discipline of finance. This theory of the firm operates on the premise that stock price maximization should be the primary goal of corporate managers. While firms will have other goals, wealth maximization for shareholders should be the ultimate purpose that orders all the other goals of a firm, according to this model. Now, in finance, the firm is a totality consisting of various types of assets and liabilities used to maximize shareholder wealth. Creating profits rather than producing goods and services is the firm's primary focus. This view is based on contractual relations, for these make possible the exchange at the heart of the firm. Business organizations, then, are typically legal fictions facilitating relations among individuals. Firms serve as a framework for mediating contractual relations between the principals, the shareholders, and the agents, the managers. The shareholder model promotes instrumental rationality that elevates a means, that is, the mediating of contractual relations for maximizing profits, to the status of an end, with no higher end to guide it, such as contributing to the larger society and nurturing those within the firm to operate with integrity of character. This model leads to privatization of those social benefits that might have otherwise arisen under a different model and loss of integrity for the firm's professionals. Now, I go through Kierkegaard on Hegel, and he basically suggests that for Hegel we've got mediation that is an abstraction, it's a deception, and it is morally bankrupt. And I won't go on the details of that, but if you'll indulge me, Robert, for one more paragraph. It seems that Kierkegaard's, or Climacus's, the pseudonym that Kierkegaard uses for the postscript is Johannes Climacus, and that's one of the points here is his use of pseudonyms. Kierkegaard's or Climacus's treatment of mediation as an abstraction, a deception, and a morally bankrupt notion might be applicable to some of the mediating of contractual relations that has gone on in capitalism of recent years and decades. Part of the problem in the global financial crisis that peaked in 2008 was that highly complex financial instruments were being used, and regulations did not cover exotic over-the-counter derivatives. With tens of $1 trillion in these questionable, overvalued derivatives floating around, with lack of capital holdings on the part of banks and insurance companies to fund the financial commitments being made, and with widespread malfunction on the part of government regulation, corporate mismanagement, and greedy risk-taking, the stage was set for a worldwide disaster. The markets mediating clearly involved abstraction, deceiving, and moral bankruptcy. Many interesting comparisons could be drawn between Kierkegaard's analysis of speculative 19th century mediation, Hegel, and a Kierkegaardian analysis of a different sort of speculative 21st century mediation. If Hegelian speculation forgot about the actually existing nature of the thinker and how that qualified the mediation that was supposedly happening, so too financial speculation forgot about the need for financial instruments to be grounded in actually existing capital, and how without that the mediation was rendered illegitimate. My last couple of sentences of the paper had stated, I've done my share of abusing Kierkegaard and Climacus in attempting to draw lines to contemporary business education. Hopefully these abuses are somewhat useful. If not, maybe someone can abuse them to make them more so. So that's my presentation.
Wonderful presentations. I want to thank our presenters and thank all of you very much for attending. January 15th is our next Thiel Forum, and that will be in the Sawhill Georgian Room. If you're interested in presenting, please let me know. Send me an email. Thank you again.